Joining us now is Steve Clements of the New America Foundation. He is founder and publisher of the Washington Note, and he's been in our studio in Washington tonight watching this unfold as we have been reporting on it. Steve, thank you for your patience. Let me get your base level reaction to this.
Well, it's very grim. I think that this, as one of your other commentators said today, has felt like, you know, we've been at this point where it either was going to turn out like Tiananmen or Iran, or it was going to turn out like Prague. And I think we're seeing that this is going to be violent, messy, and a lot of innocent and I think hopeful people are going to be victims in this mess, and we'll have to see where it goes. But it definitely is grim.
We saw this telegraphed as a strategy by President Mubarak when he spoke last night, not tonight, but 24 hours ago. He was describing protest scenes as if they were violent, full of arsonists and looters. Reporters at the time reporting on those real protests, reporting from the ground, were instead describing a carnival-like atmosphere, people who were joyous, jubilant, women and children out among the protesters. But then, sure enough, at daybreak, after Mubarak made those statements, things became violent. It's largely attributed to pro-Mubarak forces starting fights and the demonstrations then becoming scenes of bloodshed. If this is an overt strategy by the regime, that this is their way they're going to stay in power, how can the protest movement resist it?
Well, the protests of this sort, and we see the numbers of people involved, if they're not willing to yield the ground and lots of people die, it creates a different kind of momentum. What's been interesting to see is the military largely standing on the sidelines, with the exception of trying to show, as you have, to create smoke screens and give people an opportunity, keep the two sides separate to some degree. I was disturbed by that when I saw it, but folks in the White House I've talked to tonight, and Karen DeYoung in the Washington Post tomorrow, has said that the Army sees its role right now as being able to survive this mess so that it can still arbitrate between all sides, meaning the Mubarak side as one side, but also being open to those who are in complete opposition to the government. So that could be a sign of hopelessness. But the deeper issue here is that the violence you see the pro-Mubarak forces engaging in right now is an absolute violation of the social contract, if you can call that, between President Obama and Mubarak. One of the key principles President Obama said is no violence, absolutely no violence. And so I don't know what our real leverage is. I think there are a lot of people in the White House tonight who are scrambling and doing what they can. I think Bill Daley, the chief of staff of the White House, has said there's not a lot we can do. But I think you're going to begin seeing a ratcheting up of Obama's sternness and bringing out some of what he said explicitly behind the scenes much more into the public, given the fact that Mubarak has broken the deal.
Does what happens next depend on whether or not the instigation of violence, the provocation that turned today's scenes to ones that were so much more bloody than anything else we've seen, does what happens next depend on the violence being pinned on the state, not on counter-protesters, not on loyalists, but on orders from the Mubarak regime?
Look, the NDP, Mubarak's party, which one of the mistakes that many analysts and I think many in the media have made is that they very quickly discounted the chances of Jamal Mubarak, Hosni's son, really sticking around. I think that's mistaken, and Jamal Mubarak is actually, from sources I have, is running the show, is engaged with the dispatch there. He's the one who led the elections in December 2010, overwhelming landslide on behalf of Mubarak's party, in which they won 209 seats out of 221 in a massive fraudulent scam. I think the NDP, which has hired these thugs, which is moving these pro-Mubarak thugs and gangs through it, is the equivalent of the state in this case. And I think that is easy to validate. We've seen Al Jazeera and others showing the identity cards of thugs that various of the protesters have captured and shown. And so we see the NDP here and the military holding back and trying to be the backbone of something in the future and not necessarily pitching in one way or the other. I think if there's a large scale of violence, the question is, will the military do the right thing in that case and begin rounding up the NDP and the Mubarak gangs, because they know that the international community and the United States and others will create very harsh conditions for those military that have great relations with us, great relations with other nations, and they won't enjoy those relationships in the future should they not make the right call and put an end to the Mubarak franchise, if you will.
Briefly, to be clear, Steve, though, you're saying that the instruction, military to military instruction, may evolve from show restraint, meaning act as little as possible, be visible but don't move. It may change from that to protect people from violence and stop the people who are instigating the violence when you see them. That would be a big... You're saying that the advice to the Egyptian military may change.
If this is to move in a direction in which the Mubarak regime and franchise, Hosni and his son, leave, and I don't see a way that it can happen at this point until the military, the military forces take on the police and the thugs that have been hired, and that means they're taking on the National Democratic Party, Mubarak's party, and that very important and powerful political franchise. That shows you things have gone on, and we don't know if that will happen, but I think that is what the Obama administration will hope for at some level if this is to move in a positive direction. If we don't see that, then I think the situation is going to become potentially highly chaotic, very bloody, and we won't see an end to this for some time.
Steve Clemons, founder of the Washington Note from the New America Foundation. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rachel.
So what you've seen tonight unfold live on our cameras here tonight, exclusively at MSNBC, with great thanks to our NBC News assets, something we're proud to have been able to bring you. We're only able to bring it to you because of our incredible assets in Cairo, including our camera head, Mohammed Muslimani, managing editor of Nightly News, Brian Williams, the indispensable chief foreign correspondent for the network, Richard Engel. We're thankful to them.